Happy Father's Day, everyone. When I was thinking about Father's Day this week, an old song came to mind, probably older than most of you, but it was sung by Paul Peterson, and he played the son on the Donna Reed show, and it was called My Dad. My dad, I was going to sing it to you, but I thought I'd spare you. Now here is a man. To me he is everything strong. No, he can't do wrong. My dad. Now he understands when I bring in troubles to share. Oh, he's always there. My dad. When I was small, I felt 10 feet tall when I walked by his side. And everyone would say, that's his son. And my heart would burst with pride. My dad, oh, I love him so. I only hope that someday my own son will say, my dad. Now here is a man. Now, granted, when I heard those words, and I actually remembered a lot of those lyrics, but when I heard them back in 1962, when I was just a wee bane, of course, but I thought, well, that's a great song. I couldn't really relate to it a lot because that wasn't how I was experiencing my dad that week. And as kids, that changes from day to day, week to week. And I want to say, when we're celebrating any Father's Day, that I understand that for some of you it may be bittersweet. Your fathers may no longer be here. Or perhaps you didn't have a father, or the relationship was unable to be what you might have wanted it to be. Or for some of you dads, you may have some regrets. So I want to put it this way, is we want to celebrate all dads, because I know that every dad is doing the best that they can. And that even includes the dads that were too scared to actually become a dad. They thought the best they could do was not be one. And so we honor them. And also remember that parenthood is visited on the young and the inexperienced. I find that interesting, don't you? At a time when you are really dealing with ego, you are invited to be unconditionally loving, which actually does make sense because you get some balance in there. But what can happen at a time is that you don't do the dance so well and maybe it gets a little distorted. So when we celebrate dadhood, Father's Day, we want to be very gentle, both with yourself being a dad and with your dad. And know that, parenthood is a lot like farming, I think. You plant a crop, you do the best you can, and then things might be beyond your control as to how the crop turns out. And the crop doesn't necessarily thank the farmer for planting it, and kids don't necessarily thank their parents all the time either. I was listening this week to an interview by Bryce Dallas Howard, and she's an actress and director. She's actually the daughter of Ron Howard, who you may know as being a director, and was Opie on Andy Griffith's show. My, I'm going for the old, it's way past rerun time even for some of these shows. But anyway, she has recently completed a documentary on dads. And so I was listening to her interview, and her dad was there, and they had a pretty darn good relationship, and she loved to go visit the set where he was working, because he said that what he would do when she did something that was against the rules, instead of grounding her home, he would ground her from the set. And to which she exclaimed in the interview, and she said, and then I turned to him and say, you're ruining my life. And I think I've said that once or a dozen times to my parents as well. And that's just actually I told my mother she was the worst mother on the block because she wouldn't let me go out overnight with my boyfriend who was in a band when I was in high school. Isn't that terrible? She wouldn't let me do that. Parents are not necessarily appreciated. I love what Mark Twain said in the article of the Atlantic Monthly back in 1874. So some things haven't changed too much. He said, when I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant that I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much he had learned in just 7 years. Well, first off, don't call somebody an old man who's under 40. That's just, but anyway. When I was considering dads again this week, a book was written by Tom Westman. It's called Being a Good Dad When You Didn't Have One. Maybe you never had a father. But his words were advice in the book were lighten up. He said, adults, we laugh about 15 times a day. Not us. I think we probably laugh a lot more. But he says kids up to 400 times a day if they're, free. He said, so we become like children, this is another way to look at it, is make sure that we lighten up a lot. And I thought of a wonderful quote I'd heard from Harmon Killebrew. And he had said that my father used to play with my brother and me in the yard. And my mother would come out and say, you're tearing up the grass. And Dad would reply, we're not raising grass, we're raising boys. So maybe we let go of some of the periphery and we just focus on being there for our children. And I found in Ecclesiastes this quote, and it says, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. I looked up exasperate. It means not to provoke your children to anger. And when I thought of that, and of course, any kind of reference or especially a scripture quote, I interpret it with whatever is my consciousness in the moment. So when I'm thinking, do not provoke your children to anger, does not mean that, you're ruining my life. It means do not provoke them to the extent that as they grow and mature, they develop resentments. They developing distancing behaviors or things that don't serve them well, or they're going to be in long-term therapy, although being a therapist, it's a good thing. But I think that's kind of where they're going with that. So fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up. And bring them up literally in Greek means to nourish, to encourage, to propel them forward. So it's to bring up their spirits. So it's don't get them all, don't get caught up in all that sideways stuff, and encourage them, excite them. And then of course the last part says, bring up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Well, I'm going to use Jesus of Nazareth's interpretation of the Lord, and that is love. So in other words, bring them up in instruction and training in how to be loving. And I thought, well, I like that a lot. So when I was also looking at things regarding Father's Day this week, I found some old stereotypes here, but I thought it was cute initially. I'll read it to you. It says, men are just simply happier people because your last name usually doesn't change. Same work, more pay. Wrinkles add character. Wedding dresses can cost up to $1,000. Tuxedo rentals, $100. People never stare at your chest when they're talking to you. Your underwear is $8.95 for a 3-pack. Same hairstyle lasts for years, maybe even decades. One wallet, one pair of shoes, good for all seasons. And you can open all your own jars. So when I read that, and I went, well, isn't that, kind of tickled me, I must admit. And I went, and isn't that stereotypical of how we think of men? That's a pretty darn oversimplified, not the most flattering depiction. And then I went on to think about what are some of the other stereotypes that we have. And that is, men should be strong, silent type. They should be the breadwinners. Show no feelings. Don't cry. It shows weakness. Don't show tenderness. Be tough. Okay to swear, though. Especially if you're a carpenter or working the trades, then you have to swear. And you can belittle women a little bit. That's okay, too. That's part of being a man. Can you hear that these stereotypes, one things, are not accurate? They have some truth for some, but they're pretty darn limiting, aren't they? And they don't fit a lot of people a lot. So I thought I'm going to look at stereotypes and see how we can move beyond them and make sure we don't live down to them. So, and I remembered, especially the swearing part, I had a group, a men's group that met in one of the unity churches that I was a minister at a few years back. And they would meet one evening a week, and as they're meeting, there were some other groups meeting as well. And a couple weeks after the group started, a person from within the group came to me, and a person who was in another group came to me. And they both had the same similar complaint, and that was they found that the amount of swearing going on was very disturbing. Now, I must say, granted, I'm a minister, but I used to work in corrections and law enforcement, so nothing's real shocking to me. And I have been known, if I have slammed the car door on my finger, I can run a good string of expletives to express my distraught in that moment. But so these people came and they said they were concerned because it was really distracting and uncomfortable for them. So I went and talked to the men in the group. And the men in the groups, a number of them explained to me that they needed to swear because they were men, and that's how they expressed their feelings. And I listened, and I said, well, that's interesting. You may be living down to a stereotype of how you're allowed to express your feelings. And also, energetically, it's not optimal because words carry energy. And we want to be aware of that. And what is the energy that you are infusing yourself, let alone the building, let alone those around you, etc. You might want to consider how your language is actually impacting how you see yourself and how you see others. And so you might want to save some of your language for those special occasions. And then I was thinking about, one track goes to another, and I was watching the People's Court, and Judge Marilyn Milian corrected a man who very innocently, I don't think he had terribly negative intentions on it, but he said, "The girl in my office," to which the judge said, "Are you hiring underage people to work for you full time?" And the man looked at him kind of strange. He said, "No." She said, "Well, you said you have a girl in your office." And he didn't quite even get it right away. And she said, if anybody's, if you're over 18, it's a woman, it's not a girl. And again, you have to look at how things are interpreted and used, because quite often I will go out to lunch with the girls. And after you reach a certain age, again, to be called a girl might be a good thing, depending upon who it is and what their take on it is, which of course we leave up to the receiver. But anyhow, so he said you might want to be aware of that. And I remembered a long time ago, I was working at a halfway house in Dallas, Texas. And it was a nice building, old house on Oak Lawn and Cedar Springs, which is a very busy street. And so I was hiring someone, and so I was interviewing a woman and actually was going to hire her right after the interview. I offered her the job. And she took the job. And I said, "Well, that's wonderful. You can start on Monday, but use the back door." And she became incredibly irate. And it dawned on me that she had taken offense when I said use the back door, because this is a woman of color. She's a black woman. And I had told her to use the back door. Now, I had told her to use the back door because we are on a really busy intersection and we never use the front door. Nobody does. The residents don't use it. The employees don't use it. We use the back door. I called it the back door, which after that I decided to call it the main entrance. But she was offended at that. And the good news was I got over it quickly, where I first got a little defensive, like I didn't mean that because I didn't even think of that. It wasn't my intention, and realized that my intention, I'm also responsible for how things are received by me, and I can grow. And so I took that information and learned from it. And I'm learning all the time. People are letting me know how what I say impacts them, positive, negative. And it's good information, because then I can adjust, because my intention is to be connecting, not separating. So whether it's starting to call women versus girls, if you're a guy, Or if it's, being sensitive to sensitive sensibilities of others, just to be aware of that. We've come a long way. And there are so many men now who are no longer living down to any old stereotype or feeling constrained by it. I think of my nephew. He is the stay-at-home dad of 2 preschoolers. That was not in the old stereotype. And he's a wonderful, marvelous nurturer, and his wife goes to work now. And, as our consciousness evolves, we as humans can evolve. And we're no longer being told, because old stereotypes told you who you could love. And now we've gone past that. And I have my cousins, and Todd, and I think of Bill and their son Andrew, and they did not live down to the stereotype. Or if you watch HGTV, who is it? It's Nate and Jeremy. They've got their show, and they just adopted, now they have 2 children. So we are expanding what it is to be a dad, a man, a human. We are constantly evolving. And, when I was young, what were my stereotypes? Because it's natural to have them. So we want to be gentle with us. That's how we make sense of the world. And I had stereotypes at one point. Well, I thought, the old blondes have more fun. Well, I actually thought blondes and pretty people have more fun. Then at some point I got resentful, so then was blondes are dumb. I apologize to any blondes. I don't believe this anymore, and I don't want to perpetuate that stereotype, but I'm just the example that I lived, so I have to own up to that. Females don't like math and science. That was one of the stereotypes that I lived down to. Didn't even know I was doing it. I took home ec. I don't like cooking, but I took home ec. I don't know if I like science or not. Well, actually, I was pre-med, so yeah, I guess I do. But yeah, you can get the drift here that sometimes unconsciously we start living down to what is the stereotype for us, and we treat people from that stereotype. And we want to make sure we don't have to do that anymore. I was listening to the interview of a general in the armed forces just this past week. And he was talking about how he felt that he was held back in promotion. And so one time he would look at the review when he was looking to advance. And the review said that he wasn't smart enough. He got very angry at that, understandably. The man's a general. I'm figuring he's got some smarts. He was also black. And he talked to another black general, to which he got the advice. He says, stop reading the reviews. Don't read those. In other words, don't let anyone else's stereotype of you stop you and hold you back. And that's good information for all of us to make sure that we don't hold ourselves back because of someone else's impression of us. We don't need to do that ever. So if someone labels you as a ne'er-do-well or lazy, or what are some of the other, whatever it might be, or you have had run-ins with the law, so now you're an ex-con, and so that now has its own stereotype. The thing is, we don't have to live down to anyone else's stereotype about us, and we don't take on that it has limitations for us either. We can move well beyond any other's vision of us, because our vision is so much stronger. I looked at different cultures, and you notice that some cultures that take the long view really value elders. And since I'm coming towards that category, I'm not there yet, but I'm coming towards that category statistically. I would like to be valued. And so I'm not going to take on the stereotype that some of the culture holds that I've held. That's part of it too, is to be aware that I had a stereotype of what happens when you reach a certain age and add your own number and make up your own stereotype for it, and that is what it's all about. And no, it's not. I'm going to take on the indigenous people's idea of elders, which is, we want their wisdom. And we want their big picture, because after you've been on the planet a long time, you see a lot. And you put all of that into your knowledge, and it helps you in dispensing wisdom. I like that a lot. Because the reality is we're each unique, irrepeatable creations of the divine. Each of us. We're made perfectly, even if that isn't recognized by others. That means your variation of human expression is perfect. And that means you don't have to alter it in any way. And that means your identity, your preference, appearance, skin color, innate natural abilities, you name it. Those are yours, and nobody else has them. And you were created perfectly with those, to use them to be your greatest expression. And if anyone says to me or to anyone else that we don't fit the stereotype of what ever, it's like, well, thank you. I don't resist it, because you know what, resistance, persistence kind of go together. So I don't resist it, I smile. So if someone calls me, a sweet little old lady, I smile. But I don't let that limit how I'm going to interact or how I'm going to assert myself or whatever might be. And that'll help them in changing their stereotype, because we're working together. We work with each other to eliminate those mistaken understandings we have about each other. We need to be in conversation with each other and to listen, so that we can now expand, like I learned from the woman I interviewed back all those years ago in Dallas. She taught me a wonderful lesson. And it was really helpful, because she assisted me in expanding my understanding of another, which is really terrific. My husband says that each morning we wake up a new person, and it's true. We're not the people we were yesterday unless we choose to go back and do a rerun. I'm not going to do a rerun. And that means that most of the time when we're talking to each other, we're kind of talking to the person yesterday, because we haven't seen who their new are, especially when you're talking on the phone these days, more than maybe seeing in person. And so to be aware that we have that little bit of lag time in who that person is now. The best way to make that become pretty irrelevant is to respond to that person from your highest understanding of who they are. And when we greet each other, we say namaste often, which loosely, I behold the divine as you. And when we really mean that and really see that in the other person, then we're going to be pretty close in seeing who they are this day. And we're going to invite them to live up to that expression of who they are this day. I remember a story I always loved, and it was about a community in Africa. And when a woman became pregnant, she would go out from the community into the quiet, and she would listen for the song that was the special song for the person that was growing inside her. Then she would come back to the community, and she would teach them the song. And then when the child was born, the community was there, and they sang the song to the newborn. And at every significant milestone in their lives, moving into adolescence, adulthood, marriage, even death, they would sing the person their song. Help them remember who they are. And what would happen also in that community, if that person were to break the rules of the norms, the guy stole, was me, hurt somebody, whatever, instead of punishing him or her, what they would do is bring them into the center of the community, and they would all circle and sing the person their song. And they would sing until the person remembered who they were. I like that a lot. Because the truth is, who we are these magnificent divine beings, having these wonderful human experiences and doing that dance of being in the world but not of it. and contributing as we can, being active participants, feeling connection with each other from that place of knowing that we are the divine in expression. So with that in mind, I wanted to kind of close out today by sharing just a little reading with you. Because I think one of the things we can do for each other is we can see. Some people call it pray, envision. We can visualize for each other. And so get comfortable if you like to close your eyes and just take a few breaths and join me. Because in my mind's eye, I see my family and neighbors happy. Happy and healthy and knowing their value. And then expanding my vision, I see my greater community feeling the love and peace that is their naturalness. And then expanding even further out, I see this country and the people beyond its borders. I see people everywhere reaching out to each other in love and support. I see the handprint of the divine healing people, healing the body, the mind, the emotions, the hurts, and the spirit. I see ancient grudges along with unconscious stereotypes being released and replaced with feelings of deep felt connection. I see a community of people where each know their own value and feel cherished. I see a world where everyone feels safe and sees a friend in the face of a stranger. I see a world where differences are met with wonder, enthusiastic curiosity, and awe at the magnificent diversity of the Creator. I see a world where all feel heard and deep listening is the practice. I see each individual feeling the respect of their neighbors. I see a world where anyone who temporarily loses their way or anyone who feels separated is not punished, but is lovingly sung to until they remember who they are. I see a world where we all feel our unity and see the divine in each other. I see a world where we all feel our unity and see the divine in each other. Namaste. And so it is.